US President Donald Trump imposes around 25% on auto imports, semiconductors and pharmaceuticals. China's new home prices toll in January. And Egypt and Spain sign agreements to elevate relations. Welcome to the Qnews Economic Bulletin, where we bring you the latest developments shaping the global economy. From key market trends and financial updates to regional economic highlights and forecasts, we provide essential news and analysis to keep you informed. Welcome back, and we start off with the United States, as the Commerce Department has reported that the country's single-family home building fell sharply in January, dropping 8.4% to a seasonal adjusted annual rate of 993,000 units. This decline was attributed to distributions caused by snowstorms and freezing temperatures, which also impacted retail sales in the labor market. The average 30-year fixed mortgage rate remains near 7%, and tariffs on imported goods, including steel and aluminium, are further driving up costs. Permits for future single-family housing construction remained unchanged at 996,000 units in January, signaling limited near-term recovery. China has strongly criticized the tariffs imposed or threatened by US President Donald Trump, describing them as tariff shocks that could destabilize the global trading system. Speaking at a World Trade Organization meeting on Tuesday, China's ambassador to the WTO, Li Xingshan, warned that these measures could lead to heightened economic uncertainty, disrupt global trade, and even risk a global recession. He further accused the United States of undermining the rules-based multilateral trading system. The criticism follows Trump's announcement of sweeping 10% tariffs on all Chinese imports, which prompted Beijing to retaliate with its own tariffs and to file a WTO dispute against Washington. In response to China's condemnation of U.S. tariffs at the World Trade Organization, U.S. envoy David Bisbee dismissed Beijing remarks as being hypocrite, accusing China of as operating a predatory non-market economic system. Bisbee argued that China has failed to honor the commitments it made when joining the World Trade Organization over 2 decades ago. He accused Beijing of producing a long record of violating, disregarding, and evading World Trade Organization rules. US President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday plans to impose tariffs of around 25% on auto imports, semiconductors and pharmaceuticals as early as April the 2nd. Speaking at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida, Trump indicated that tariffs on semiconductor chips and drugs could rise even higher over time. He added that the tariffs will go substantially higher over the course of a year, while noting that affected companies would be given time to relocate production to the United States to avoid the tariffs.
Just 1 month into his second term, President Donald Trump is doubling down on his hardline trade policies, announcing a 25% tariff on auto imports, semiconductors, and pharmaceutical. The new tariffs, set to take effect on April 2nd, add to the 10% duties he recently imposed on Chinese goods and a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. Trump says the move is aimed at reshoring key industries, but economists warn it could drive up consumer prices and disrupt supply chains. Car prices could surge by thousands of dollars as nearly half of U.S. vehicle sales rely on imports. Chip makers are also bracing for impact. While U.S. firms lead in design, manufacturing has long been outsourced to Asia. Taiwan's TSMC and South Korea's Samsung could be hit the hardest, potentially accelerating their U.S. expansion plans. Meanwhile, the pharmaceutical industry faces uncertainty, with the U.S. importing over $176 billion in drugs last year. Major suppliers like Ireland, Germany, and India could see disruptions affecting medication costs. As Trump pushes for what he calls balanced trade, the risk of retaliation looms, raising concerns of a broader trade war just weeks into his presidency.
Joining us from Cairo is writer and journalist specializing in economic affairs, Mr. Mohammed Yahya, to discuss the latest developments related to Trump's tariffs decisions in his trade policy after a month at presidency. Welcome, sir, to Qnews, the economic bulletin, and of course we need your intake in this very important issue. Trump has been in office for just 1 month and has already imposed sweeping tariffs. What does this signal about his trade policy for the next 4 years, sir?
In the outset, the United States of America, in pursuit, as stated by President Trump, to regain the strength of dollar and the economy, the American economy laid down by Joe Biden. And we cannot deny the competitive between America and China that resulted in some tax restraints of China imported during his first term. Trump reiterated his vows or sanctions that intended to impose since he took office in the last January. And as we know that America has already imposed 10% of tax tariffs upon China and continued this policy to include Mexico and Canada over 25% on import, in addition to 10% of the imports coming from Canada. There is a state of tit for tat between United States of America and its competitiveness for such as China and Canada and Mexico, and some accusation that led upon the sanctions as accusing Mexico in the past few weeks as one of the sources of important the illegal empowerment manpower and entering the drugs to America. We expect in the upcoming years is to some sort of manipulation upon such an economic sanctions by China and EU, as Foreign Affairs of China announced by having talks with Germany upon relying on the components of the electrical automotives, the green economy, and etc. These are the developments that would come out during the upcoming.
Okay, sir, can we move on to another point, please? The 25% tariff on auto imports is expected to raise car prices significantly. How might this impact both consumers in the United States auto industry, sir? Both the consumers and the U.S. auto industry, sir.
As you know, there are world orientations in replacing the traditional vehicles of traditional gas to minimize the carbon dioxide emissions, as announced by Kingston of Saudi Arabia, that is intending to open and launch a complex of King Salman in automotive manufacturing. As you know, such measurement is to nationalize electrical vehicles or supporting the smart cars of less relying on fuel. Such attempts to have some sort of hit the American plans in drilling of fuels or the fossil fuel. It is certain that the expansion either from Europe and China that can dominate a great rate of production in the Middle East.
Sir, and the consumers that don't want to use but fuel, they don't want to use otherwise. What do they do?
It is certainly there will be some sort of incentives and some other procedures taken by the manufacturing corporations of new technologies such as electrical vehicles, either by decreasing the prices of the electrical cars or those vehicles that rely on the double gas, such as gas or some other types.
Okay, so they're going to rely on other sources. Trump has justified these tariffs as a way to encourage companies to move production to the U.S. Is this a realistic expectation, or could it lead to supply chain disruptions instead, sir?
We cannot deny that Donald Trump is in pursuit to increase his popularity within the United States of America in a way or another through repetitive statements in supporting its own economy. And for those who are in competitive with the United States of America, such as China, Donald Trump is seeking through these statements and to support the U.S. currency. So he's targeting the new emerging economy entities such as BRICS. And some such measures taken by USA could be a retaliation or a reaction, could be reasonable for what we're witnessing from the new blocs.
Sir, of course, we couldn't witness the more popular and more controversial personality like Donald Trump for the past 30 days. The semiconductor industry is already facing challenges with supply shortages. How could these new tariffs again on chips affect global tech companies and the U.S. economy, sir?
Certainly, the United States of America, through some materials that the tariffs were imposed upon to encourage the industrial sectors within America, either the technological ones or the or other to use natural sources that would contribute largely in supporting the American economy. As you know, there are talks took place between USA and India through the last visit of Narendra Modi, the president of India, and they thus discussed the economic cooperation between them. So we expect in the upcoming period to have some sort of coordination between America and India in the fields of technology. As you know, that India has a great centers, advanced centers in the sectors of the smart industries.
Sir, with the World Trade Organization already discussing rising trade tensions, could these new tariffs push the United States and its trade partners towards a more serious trade war at this point?
It might happen. And
it might happen?
Announced to file complaints in the WTO complaining about the American administration because of its restraint procedures and would hit the world economy of shocks, particularly that the world is witnessing several types of crises, such as geopolitical crisis. So we expect that we have some sort of turbulence regarding the economic measurements that would lead to the that for the President Donald Trump to set back of some of his procedures and executive orders.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohammed Yahya, for your insights, and we really appreciate your informative knowledge. Now we move on to the latest developments from all over the world. The Office for National Statistics has reported that British inflation accelerated more than anticipated in January, reaching a 10-month high of 3%. This figure surpassed both the Bank of England's and economics expectations, which had forecast a rise to 2.8% from December's reading of 2.5%. The unexpected increase was driven by several factors, including a smaller than usual drop in airfares and a rise in automotive fuel prices. Additionally, food prices climbed and private school fees increased following the government's decision to impose value-added tax on them. Official data has revealed that China's property sector continues to face significant challenges as new home prices totaled for the second consecutive month in January. Prices remained unchanged month on month, highlighting the ongoing struggle to stabilize the crisis-hit market despite persistent government efforts to boost sentiment. On a year-on-year basis, new home prices fell by 5%, a slight improvement from the 5.3% decline recorded in December. Analysts warn that recovery from China's property market will likely be slow due to high inventory, weak demand, and population decline. Japan's exports rose for the fourth consecutive month in January, driven by strong auto shipments to the United States. Total exports increased by 7.2% year-on-year, with exports to the United States climbing 8.1%, supported by robust auto sales and a weaker yen. Automobiles represent 28% of Japan's exports to the United States, making the sector highly vulnerable with the US 25% announced tariffs on auto. However, exports to China fell by 6.2%, impacted by declining shipments of shipmaking equipment. Imports surged 16.7% in January, outpacing exports and resulting in a larger than expected trade deficit of 758 trillion yen. The Reserve Bank of New Zealand cut its benchmark interest rate by 50 basis points to 3.75% on Wednesday, signaling further reduction to support the struggling economy amid moderating inflation. Governor Adrian Orr stated that the central bank expects 2 additional 25 basis point cuts in April and May, with the official cash rate projected to reach 3% by the end of 2025. The announcement caused the New Zealand dollar to slip 0.3% before recovering slightly, while 90-day bank bill futures railed as markets prices a 93% chance of further easing in April. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez have signed an agreement to alleviate the relations between both countries to the level of the strategic partnership. They also witnessed the signing of several agreements and memoranda of understanding aimed at strengthening cooperation between the two countries. The agreement covered a range of fields and sectors, including immigration, economic and trade cooperation, tourism and antiquities, infrastructure and transport, as well as peace, stability and sustainable development in Africa. The Regional Tourism Commissioner in Tunisia's Tabarka, Isa Marawani, has reported that the value of tourism investments under construction and planned in his governorate has exceeded 400 million Tunisian dinar. These projects are expected to create approximately 1,000 additional jobs over the next few years once completed. The investment plans are currently in advanced stages, with studies being prepared and licenses awaited to begin work. Among the key investments is an integrated resort project in the Marjan area of Tabarka, which includes apartments, villas, shops and water games. The state of Qatar has committed to investing $10 billion in India, marking a significant step in strengthening bilateral relations between both nations. The investment will span various sectors, including infrastructure, technology, energy, and sustainability. This announcement was made during the two-day state visit of Qatar's Emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, to India on February 17 and 18 of the year 2025 at the invitation of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. As part of this initiative, Qatar's Sovereign Wealth Fund, the Qatar Investment Authority, will establish an office in India to facilitate investments. Oil prices edged up on Wednesday, buoyed by concern over oil supply disruptions in Russia and the United States, while market awaits clarity on sanctions as the United States attempts to broker a deal to end the war in Ukraine. Brent crude futures were up 0.8% at $76.48 a barrel, on track for a third day of gains. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures for March rose 1%. $72.60, up 2.6% from the previous close before Monday's U.S. public holiday. Gold prices rose to a record high on Wednesday on safe haven demand following US President Donald Trump's latest tariff threats, while investors awaited minutes of the Federal Reserve's January policy meeting later in the day. Spot gold was flat at $2,934.49 an ounce after surging to an all-time high of $2,946.85 per ounce earlier in the session. Prices scaled a record for the 9th time this year. U.S. gold futures rose 0.1% to $2,952.10. In markets, global shares witnessed a collective decline during Wednesday's sessions. Futures for the S&P 500 inched down 0.03%, while futures for the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 0.27%. In Europe, France's CAC 40 was down 1.31%, Germany's DAX decreased 1.78%, Britain's FTSE 100 declined 0.68%. Moving on to Asia, where Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index dipped 0.14%, while the Shanghai Composite was up 0.81%. The Nikkei 225 declined 0.27%. That's all for now. Here's a wrap-up of what we've been covering. U.S. President Donald Trump imposes around 25% on auto imports, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals. China's new home prices toll in January. And Egypt and Spain sign agreements to elevate relations. This concludes our economic bulletin for today. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at Qnews EG to stay informed. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.